اللهم أجل الحق على قلوبنا وألسنتنا وارزقنا الإخلاص في كل قول وعمل. Today inshallah is going to be a quick khatira. Last time we finished Surah Al-Mursalat. We're not going to start the new set of verses except after Ramadan inshallah. But I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you what we will be discussing in Ramadan inshallah for the Fajr khatira. As you know, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, we do on daily basis a tafsir of the Quran in like the order of the Quran. We're in Surah Al-An'am, and then on Fridays we do the tafsir of the Quran based on the order of revelation. So it's the focus on the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Quran, about Ramadan, you know what's the main feature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran about Ramadan? Can you tell me? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the Quran, how many times is Ramadan mentioned in the Quran? I know it's an early morning, but inshallah again we need to get into the Ramadan spirit inshallah. How many times is Ramadan mentioned in the Quran? One. Only one. If it is another one, let me know. But I think it's only once, right? But it's subhanallah, right? Subhanallah. It's only once. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Ramadan, what do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about? Quran. Okay. Subhanallah. Not fasting, huh? Not fasting. No. So, not Ramadan. The verse that talks about fasting is not explicitly talking about Ramadan initially, right? كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. A few days. And the Mufassirin talk about this. أَيَّام مَعْدُودَات. What is it? Exactly. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Ramadan, what did He say? He said, شَهْرُ رَمَضَانَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ. Says the month of Ramadan is the month that the Quran is being revealed. So, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, I said I also want to share this, the Fajr program with you because mashallah the Fajr family is the one, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, that attends these daily tafsir with the focus of the Quran. So the focus is even more pertinent for us to focus on the Quran during the month of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala associates the month of Ramadan with the revelation of the Quran. So what do we want to do this year inshallah? The program this year is as follows. Is we pause from the daily tafsir that we do based on the order of the Quran, and we try to make a theme every year. So this year's theme is ayatullah, the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word the ayah in the language is actually a sign. A sign. In poetry, I'm not very good with English poetry, but what do you call a poetry like line? You have to help me out. I don't know. What do you call a poetry line? Nobody knows poetry here? Bayt in Arabic. What is it in English? Stanza, okay. In Arabic, it's bayt, okay? Bayt. This is the minimum, basically, unit where the shi'r, the poetry, is based on. In the Quran, what do we call it in English? It's called a verse, right? We call a verse. I was going to say that the poetry, by the way, we call it a verse as well, but I'm not 100% sure. But the point here is what? Is the verses, what do we say in it in Arabic? When we say this is a verse from the Quran, what is it called in Arabic? Ayah. It's called what? Ayah. The same word ayah in the Arabic language means what actually? Means a sign. A sign. As if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in every single verse from the Quran, there's a sign for us. There's a sign for us. But we're not going to be focusing on these signs, which are the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His book, but we're going to be focusing on the verses of the Quran that talks about the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. the verses in the Quran that talks about the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today I just want to give you a preview. I'm not going to again do tafsir, but I'm just going to give you a preview. In Surah Yasin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Surah Yasin is Surah number 36. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, starting with verse 32. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says? بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? And a sign for them, a sign. That's what we're focusing on during Ramadan. The signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings one of these signs, it's telling you and I what? Think, contemplate. Because we're supposed to be contemplating about the whole Quran, but He says, hey, look out for this sign. This is something out of my creation that I want you to focus on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these verses says, well, and a sign for them is the dead land. We give it life, and we bring it forth from its. We bring forth from it grains, so that they eat thereof. And we have made therein gardens of date palms and grapes, and we have caused springs of water to gush from therein, so that they may eat from the fruit thereof, and their hands made it not. Will they not give thanks? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a sign. One of these signs, it says, look at this water that I'm bringing down. You and I, alhamdulillah, we are in a great blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to live in this area where you actually have 4 seasons. You and I, we see with our own eyes, when fall comes and the trees start losing their leaves, right? And during winter time now, we're walking, you're seeing like dead trees. You think it's like dead land. And all of a sudden, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the cycle goes back again and you see what? Spring comes. When we're living here for a while, sometimes we don't notice this anymore, by the way. Why? Because we see it all the time. Sometimes, alhamdulillah, we notice it. We notice from the weather. But this is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things are dead. I always wonder, again, when I first moved to the US, I came from Egypt, very dry land, a lot of desert. And I went to school at Virginia Tech. On the way there driving, if you've driven down Route 7, 66, and then 81, all the way down 81, subhanAllah, you see so many, like again, forests, like it's just like trees everywhere. And the thought that came to my mind, I said, the first thing I saw, I said, La ilaha illallah, subhanAllah. Why? I said, if you have a front lawn with a little bit of grass in front of your house, you understand how much work it takes to just make it green. Good green. And you understand it's almost impossible to make it greener than the neighbor, right? Because the grass is always greener on their side, huh? So, and you look at all of these trees and say, who would come and water this to make it green, that lush green like that? And easily, you would come to the conclusion and said, no one. Actually, even if they tried, they will fail. It's so much. But the one who has created it made it a sign for him to bring what these trees need to sustain life. And if you and I start getting into this way of this, we'll fail. Say, I'll take over. My thing now, I take it. I guarantee you will fail. So much, subhanAllah. I said, just driving down the road, it's so much. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this verse. وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ الْأَرْضُ الْمَيْتَةِ أَحْيَيْنَاهَا. So look at this dead land. We, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're the only ones bring down the water. It comes back again, live again. The one who created. That's an ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Towards the end of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, why? We bring this water down, and then you find fruits, you find like all of these things that you can eat and you can enjoy and all of this. Towards the end of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, after the third verse, He said what? لِيَأْكُلُوا مِنْ ثَمَرِهِ وَمَا عَمِلَتْهُ أَيْدِيهِمْ أَفَلَا يَشْكُرُونَ. Towards the end, it says, what? Are they going to eat and enjoy it? Aren't they grateful for this? Shouldn't they be thankful for this? That's the purpose of the sign. The purpose of the sign in the first place is what? Think, contemplate. Wow, subhanAllah. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought that. And then the outcome is what? أَفَلَا يَشْكُرُونَ. Shouldn't they be grateful? That's a preview for what we're going to do in Ramadan. Why? Because we're going to be covering, inshallah, there's going to be 29 of these different signs that we're going to be looking at. And we're not going to have to go into like the detailed tafsir of the verse itself, but rather think about the verses we're going to be reading as such, but think about the ayah. And on a daily basis, inshallah, when you leave here, you think about this ayah for maybe 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, or throughout the day. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ, don't they contemplate? We contemplate. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَشْكُرُونَ, aren't they thankful? We become thankful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is something for them, لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, for people who are thinker, like who have good intellect, that we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we understand it amongst it. But the purpose is to interact with the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because for us, at the end of the day, they're all, as a sign, it's a sign. They all draw you back, they all point back to the one and only creator, the one and only sustainer of the universe, the one and only provider in this whole entire world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the sign is a form for us to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is a way for us to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last thing I'm going to say, he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَنُصَرِّفُ الْآيَاتِ Umar, you have to help me. وَنُصَرِّفُ الْآيَاتِ عَلَّهُمْ what? وَنُصَرِّفُ لَهُمْ الْآيَاتِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about تَصْرِيف الْآيَات. تَصْرِيف الْآيَات, Surah Al-An'am. What does تَصْرِيف الْآيَات means? تَصْرِيف الْآيَات is to diversify them. To change. It's not only one ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not always saying, like, look at the sun, look at the sun, look at the sun, look at the sun. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is diversifying the ayat. And I mentioned that before. I said it's beautiful because each one of us have a different way of consuming the data, understanding information, connecting. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يُصَرِّفُ الْآيَات, diversifies this ayat. The way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings it to us in a diverse way. So I always say, a visual person, when they read the Quran, actually they can draw a visual mental image in their mind. Oh, this is beautiful, this is amazing. If you're that kind of person. Some people are just, it works through the ears. When they hear something, they understand it. They might not imagine it, but they really understand it. So some verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَسْمَعُونَ, right? Don't they hear? Don't they listen? And the other verses says, أَفَلَا يُبْصِرُونَ, don't they see? Don't they watch? Right? So diversification of the ayat is a way for us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to address each and every single one of us individually. What clicks with you and I, what you and I understand, versus someone else. The diversification of al-ayat, tasrif al-ayat. Right? So inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, make us among those who reach Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who take the benefit of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who contemplate on His ayat. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who internalize these ayat and work on it and make it part of our daily life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who love His book, understand His book, follow His guidance in our lives. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those that we follow Him on the day, that we see Him on the day of judgment, and He is pleased with us for being servants of His, following His guidance and His book. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who will follow in the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and grant us His companionship.